And the U.S. has amassed a significant military presence in the Caribbean Sea as part of the Trump administration's effort to combat narco-terrorist organizations operating in the region. Our Washington correspondent, Luis Eduardo Martinez, has the latest developments and what we can expect in the days to come.
Thus far, the Trump administration has authorized 9 strikes against cartels, both in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. Some 43 designated narco-terrorists have been killed trying to smuggle over 100,000 lethal doses of illegal drugs.
Se están inventando.
The people of the United States know it. They are fabricating a new eternal war. They promised they would never again get involved in a war, and they are fabricating a war that we will avoid. How? By mobilizing the people of South America.
Nicolas Maduro, an indicted narco-terrorist, has a $50 million bounty on his head. He is accused of leading the cartel of the Suns and aiding and abetting other terrorist organizations infiltrate the United States, like Tren de Aragua and the Lebanese terrorist group Hezbollah.
If I was Maduro, I'd head to Russia or China right now.
Because?
His days are numbered. Something's going to happen. Whether it's internal or external, I think something's going to happen.
The U.S. has an amphibious readiness group with 4,000 Marines. The world's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier group and its entire air wing, a fast-attack nuclear submarine, 4 destroyers, a special forces ship, and a surveillance plane in the region.
President Trump told me yesterday that he plans to brief members of Congress when he gets back from Asia about future potential military operations against Venezuela and Colombia. So there will be a congressional briefing about a potential expanding from the sea to the land.
Venezuelan opposition leader and Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado has backed the U.S. strikes on foreign terrorist organizations and has thanked President Trump for his efforts in dismantling Maduro's narco-terrorist network that helped finance his regime.
The assets are there to do everything up to and including decapitation of government. Now, has a decision been made? That I don't know. But it looks increasingly like some action may take place.
Since Nicolas Maduro took power in Venezuela back in 2013, some 8 million Venezuelans have fled the country, causing the largest refugee crisis in the Americas in history. Close to 1 million Venezuelans have migrated to the United States. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
So, a U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer arriving in Trinidad. Joining us to discuss is Mike Sorelli, retired U.S. Navy SEAL and Chief Talent Officer at Overwatch Mission Critical. Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon.
Mike, that warship will take part in a joint military exercise amid, you could say, heightened tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. What is the broader strategy here?
Well, one, it is very much intentional, given the region and what's going on. These type of joint or combined training exercises with our allies are pretty regular and routine going on across the world. It is very significant that it's in this area, and it is contemplating, or let's say, making the situation more complex from the viewpoint of Venezuela. They don't like the fact that this is going on, that the U.S. is working with our allies in the region. It makes them feel boxed in, and hence we're seeing the protest from President Maduro.
How do you think it's going to be read by the other Caribbean nations or the other nations in the region?
I think one of positivity. Remember, too, that the military brings a lot of money to these port towns and these Caribbean ports, so it does add to their economy. We have good relationships with a lot of the Caribbean countries, so more U.S. involvement means more economic development for that region. So I believe the overall viewpoint from the Caribbean nations outside of Venezuela is one of positivity.
You mentioned Venezuela's criticism, talked about military provocation, provoking Venezuela, calling it a threat to Caribbean peace. Do you see it that way, Mike?
From their viewpoint, yes, I can understand that. Now, we know that Venezuela is part of transnational criminal organizations. They're part of the drug trade. They've been infiltrating drugs, smuggling drugs into the United States. The fact that they took out these 10 boats and 100,000 lethal doses of drugs means that is 100,000 less drugs in the hands of Americans that could have resulted in a death. We've been at war with the drug cartels for over 3 decades. It's about time we have a president with the fortitude to actually bring the fight to them. And he is invoking Article 2. He has the right to deploy the military. But what's more important, people just tend to forget, is that law enforcement is not trained, manned, or equipped to bring this fight to the cartels and actually crush the amount of drugs being smuggled into the United States.
You think it's been effective, the Trump administration's actions so far, Mike?
Well, big ocean, only so many ships. We can't cover the entire ocean, but remember, they're using submersibles as well as surface vessels. So it would require a lot more forces to make sure that we're interdicting a much higher percentage of the boats trying to smuggle drugs in. But it's a necessary step. You know, we always view war from the vantage point of global, Iraq, Afghanistan, but this is our hemisphere. And the American land has almost become a battleground. It's been a battleground of asymmetric means of foreign countries trying to smuggle drugs and kill Americans. And keep in mind, we caught over 22,000 pounds of fentanyl just last year alone. We don't know what got past us. In those 22,000 pounds of fentanyl, if you follow the DEA rule of thumbs, 2 milligrams is lethal, then that's enough to kill 15 billion people, and that's 15 times the size of the United States.
It's incredible, Mike. We see the Pentagon ordered the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group into the U.S. Southern Command area. What advantages does this strike group bring, and could the presence of a nuclear-powered carrier perhaps escalate tensions in the region?
So when you deploy a carrier strike group, especially with thousands of Marines on it, you basically have the ability to conduct wide spectrum warfare. Meaning you can do an amphibious assault, meaning you can take helicopters with Marines on board and infiltrate into Venezuela. So it is a show of force of our combat power, but it does give optionality to the president. President can conduct a wide range of military operations while supporting in parallel his approval for CIA clandestine operations to hopefully overthrow or dethrone, in a sense, Maduro.
You think this is the ultimate goal here, Mike? You think they want to topple Maduro?
I do. It is regime change. There's no mistake about that. The means we go about it, I don't think it's going to be a full-on military assault. Just as the president has found peace or negotiated peace in many countries, I don't think President Trump is going to go with a full-scale invasion. I do believe it is a show of force of our combat power in the region, and that enough is enough when it comes to the drug cartels and the smuggling of drugs in the United States. If he's going to utilize all the assets given to his avail, what he most likely will try to do, again, through CIA operations, is invigorate an indigenous resistance force within the country to uprise against Maduro in the military and overtake the country, affecting regime change. I think that is the most likely outcome.
But Mike, they've tried and failed on this more than once. What would make this time any different?
Well, you learn a lot from each failure. Risk is inherent in all operations, military or CIA. You can't cover all your bases. But again, given the circumstances in that Maduro feels so boxed in, you saw him on that video out in a grass field. He's probably constantly on the move in fear for his life of an American strike from the air. So this may be a matter of timing. We've learned from our past mistakes in Latin America and our failed attempts to overthrow governments. And hope is never a course of action, but you've got to hope that we have a strategic plan that is backed by timing, that is backed by the right manpower, that is backed by the right resistance forces, and that hopefully we can be successful this go around.
Never a dull moment. Mike Sorelli, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mexico is getting more time to make a trade deal with the United States. President Claudia Sheinbaum says that the U.S. is extending its deadline to reach a trade deal. During a daily press briefing, Sheinbaum said she spoke with President Trump briefly over the weekend. During their chat, they agreed to extend trade talks for, quote, a few more weeks. This will give the countries more time to reach a deal on non-tariff trade barriers. Sheinbaum said there are still nearly 55 trade barriers to resolve. In July, the U.S. agreed to a 90-day pause on tariff increases. some of which were set to increase to 30%. That pause was going to end this week. And President Trump issues a warning to Russia, comes after Moscow announced it tested a new nuclear weapon capable of reaching the United States. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the Russia update.
They're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either.
President Trump responds to Russia taking a step towards deploying a nuclear-powered cruise missile. According to Moscow, the weapon can pierce any current or future anti-missile defense. Russia's military says a test shows the missile can travel over 8,000 miles, capable of reaching the US. Trump responded on Monday.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shore. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles.
Moscow defends its nuclear test. A spokesman says the action is needed to protect Russia's national interests.
To ensure security is crucial for Russia, especially in the context of the militaristic mood of the Europeans. The Europeans are gripped by hysteria that is Russophobic.
He added that the test is no reason to strain relations between Moscow and Washington. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
Trump's meeting with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. Xi has launched a major crackdown on the country's Christians. Joining us now to discuss is Kay Rubacek, author, filmmaker, and China human rights advocate. Good morning, good afternoon, Kay. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Kay, as we heard, Chinese authorities recently arrested dozens of members from a Christian church in, I believe it was a nationwide crackdown. It's ironic, China's own constitution supposedly guarantees freedom of belief. How does this crackdown fit into perhaps broader human rights violations there in China?
Unfortunately, it is just part of how the Chinese Communist Party has treated its people and their wish to have freedom of belief for more than 70 years. So the Communist Party itself has its own constitution, separate to China, the country. And the Communist Party requires that it is higher than God or any other deity in all of China. So any Christians who are trying to worship, say, an original Bible, they're not allowed to do that if they're trying to put God above the Communist Party, which is part of Christianity, being above God, being above any political state, they will be persecuted. So the Chinese Communist Party has not changed their stance, even though on paper it might look like they offer some freedom of religion, but it's all within the requirements of the Communist Party, which is a one-party rule over the whole nation. That just hasn't changed.
It's just incredible, Kay, to see this continuing after so many years. Kay, President Trump is in Asia. It looks like he'll meet with Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping. But it seems human rights have not been a core topic during any recent trade negotiations. Why do you think that is?
Well, in 2020, President Trump had said that he was delaying human rights and not bringing that to the table with trade deals. I think all of us are hoping that he will do that this time, but it's just not looking likely. China is a one-party state. It is not like dealing with other countries that have more open democracies. So China also puts these requirements on all trading partners that they are not allowed to so-called interfere with internal affairs, as they put it. And so much of China's human rights abuses are just towards its own citizens. Billion of people, and their human rights are sorely lacking because of the Communist Party. I think America, we should have learned after decades of engagement with China that failed in improving human rights in China. We really have to do something different this time.
We know the regime leaders are very afraid for their reputation should these human rights abuses become even more public. Kay, if you were along with the president and his entourage, perhaps how would you advise them on how these human rights abuses could potentially factor into any U.S.-China trade discussions?
Well, I would hope that the president is looking at not only the American benefits from these deals. I know that he's definitely trying to follow the mandate he's been given of making America strong and great again and improving the economy and looking at deals that are going to benefit America and American businesses. So that is something that he needs to do. But I would be asking him, and I think all people who believe in human rights are asking President Trump to please consider the people of China. The people of China is not the Chinese Communist Party, but the Communist Party tries to make the world believe that China is the Communist Party, which is like saying that America is the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. It's not. And in China, we really have to deal with that country in a different manner to every other country. And I think with the way President Trump has handled peace deals, he's done such a wonderful job. But China, we're looking at internal human rights abuses, and it's not the same as doing peace deals between countries. These are human rights, very serious abuses happening to Chinese citizens within the nation. And that's where I really hope that he will put in some requirements there to help that.
Okay, you mentioned that China is not the Chinese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party likewise is not China, but the Communist Party has violated human rights in China ever since it took power there. Is there anything that the U.S. can actually do to make a difference?
Absolutely. If we feel helpless and powerless, well, then that's the result we will get. But I think President Trump has shown a strong stance in so many areas, and certainly with international trade. But I think they really have to understand how China operates and that they are an adversary. They are using drug warfare against Americans. So expecting them just to go and change their internal policy on fentanyl or change their policy on Christians is really challenges the fundamental control of the party over the people and the nation. So this is so much bigger than just trade deals. So if the American government is going in there and just saying, we need trade deals, but we want you to stop killing and torturing your people, it takes it to another level. And I think that's what the American government needs to do. President Trump needs to take it to another level instead of just saying, okay, let's just barter and forget that there's all this brutality going on. We need to stop forgetting and putting that aside because that's just been sidelined for far too long.
We saw in the images just there, Kay, that the regime collapsing the Christian churches is just incredible to see. Kay, got about 30 seconds. What are you going to be watching for most closely in that meeting between Trump and Xi?
Understanding, do they understand that China is not the Chinese Communist Party? And can they speak up for the Chinese people and not just for business? That's what we're hoping for.
Kay Rubacek, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And a labor union representing 820,000 government employees is demanding an end to the government shutdown. The union's president called on congressional Democrats and Republicans to pass a continuing resolution to fund the government. The president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Everett Kelly, weighed in. Kelly said, quote, "Both political parties have made their point, and still there is no clear end in sight." Kelly continued to quote, "It's time to pass a clean continuing resolution and end the shutdown today. No half measures and no gamesmanship." Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has refused to support the Republican-backed resolution in its current form. The Democrat has said that any bill to fund the government must extend health care subsidies. And the Senate will reconvene this afternoon, but another vote on the short-term funding bill is not on the schedule. That's after failing for the 11th time last week. The House remains out of session this week. And Indiana Governor Mike Braun today called for state lawmakers to return for a special session. They will be redrawing the state's congressional map amid a national fight over redistricting. The effort is intended to give the Republican Party an easier path to maintain control of the House in the 2026 midterms. Indiana lawmakers will convene on November 3rd, but it's unclear if enough of the GOP majority Senate will back the new maps. And opponents are expected to challenge any new maps in court. President Trump has called on Republican states to redraw maps. The White House has held multiple meetings with Indiana lawmakers in recent months. Republicans in Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina have moved quickly to enact new districts, and California Democrats are seeking to counter with their own redistricting plan. And the Trump administration is focusing on the beautification of transportation infrastructure. A new council is being formed to handle the details. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
A first-of-its-kind council is being created to build beautiful buildings like Penn Station here right behind me. The council will be advising U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on building and restoring the beauty to transportation infrastructure like bridges, highways, and transit hubs. It's being called the BTIC, or Beautifying Transportation Infrastructure Council. In a statement, Secretary Duffy said, "What happened to our country's proud tradition of building great, big, beautiful things? It's time the design for America's latest infrastructure projects reflects our nation's strength, pride, and promise."
We've lost something in the modern age, you know? I mean, look at these old buildings and why they're so beautiful. It's just because they took that extra time for the artistry of somebody to do their job.
Carl Murwowski is a construction coordinator and influencer on a mission to find those high-quality items for the construction world.
And now it just feels like, you know, deadlines are so much tighter, and it's you don't have time to make them look as good as they can. They just want to get them done so they can move on to the next thing. So it's sort of a problem that's been around for a while in construction.
Secretary Duffy said, "We're engaging the best and brightest minds in architectural design and engineering to make beautiful structures that move you and bring about a new golden age of transportation."
I think your surroundings have a huge impact on your overall mental health and well-being. You know, your feeling of like, I like being here. You know, like we do that with landscape architecture and just having a clean house. To, you know, I mean, how small do you want to get? But it's like your surroundings affect your mood. And if you're driving down the road and you can look out and be like, oh, that's really cool, or you know, whatever it is, the more times you can do that, I think it's going to make for overall more I don't know if it's someone I want to say better well-being, but overall satisfaction and happiness. You know what I mean?
The council will also identify best practices, develop aesthetic performance metrics, and provide guidance on projects that enhance public spaces and reflect local character. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
And the National Hurricane Center issued a warning today as Hurricane Melissa barrels toward Jamaica. The Category 5 storm is expected to hit the island tomorrow morning, with the center's director Michael Brennan with more updates.
In Jamaica, do not venture out of your safe shelter. Catastrophic, life-threatening flash flooding, numerous landslides are expected today through Tuesday. The wind threat is going to dramatically increase overnight and early Tuesday with catastrophic winds in the eye wall where that comes on shore, potentially causing total structural failure in those regions along the coast and also in areas of high terrain that experience the eye wall. Life-threatening storm surge, damaging waves are likely near and to the east of where the center crosses the coast.
Parts of Jamaica, including the historic harbor town of Port Royal, are under a mandatory evacuation order. Meanwhile, residents along Cuba's southeastern coast were bracing for the Category 5 hurricane. The storm is expected to make landfall there Tuesday night. The National Hurricane Center expects up to 20 inches of rain and a life-threatening storm surge on the island. And still to come. Over 10,000 U.S. troops now positioned in the Caribbean. President Trump will brief lawmakers on future military actions to combat narco-terrorist organizations in the region.